I'll draw upon the vintage that you just referred to and ask you to put today's events and, of course, the broader scandal into some sort of context or perspective with relation to other issues of political misconduct that you've covered over the years.
Well, I've followed a lot of sexual and financial scandals in politics for 40 years. I've seen ministerial resignations, and I have smelt the stench of the death of governments, the fall of Margaret Thatcher, the end of the Blair government, the fall of Gordon Brown, and many, many more, the great, great dramas during the Maastricht debate under John Major. There has never been anything remotely like this. In other words, egregious, stinking behaviour at the heart of government when the rest of the country was trying to do the right thing. I think most important, I was very, very interested in Theo's analysis, a very, very good précis and summary of what's in the report, Theo. But I think the single line that matters most is right at the beginning, finding conclusion number 2. And she says, whatever the initial intent, what took place at many of these gatherings and the way they developed was not in line with COVID guidance at the time. Boris Johnson said again and again, no rules were broken. We have it in absolute black and white from Sue Gray herself. Rules were broken again and again and again. And the culture, this business of the junior civil servants being unable to report what they felt was inappropriate. We heard yesterday about custodians who didn't like the look of these parties being mocked by people who were at the party. Yes. The culture is what I describe again as stinking.
The likelihood of anything like this unfolding under any of the other prime ministers you've just mentioned? I know this is a bit of a counterfactual, but is there something unique about Downing Street in its current iteration, or could this fraying at the edges have become endemic under any other prime minister that you've reported on?
I really can't imagine it. I mean, there's a sad bit almost, James, at the end where Sue Gray says she sort of sticks up for the civil servants, and she says, she's still proud to be a civil servant, and she says many dismayed this behaviour took place. Public have a right to expect much higher standards. It is my firm belief, however, that these events did not reflect the prevailing culture in government and the civil service at the time. In other words, outside Downing Street, outside Number 10, we still have an uncorrupted, well-behaving civil servants outside the centre. Now, Margaret Thatcher ran Number 10, ran the Downing Street machine with a rod of iron. She had very high standards. Everybody worked extremely hard. There was certainly no kind of drunkenness. Same thing, I would say, in a very different way with, Tony Blair. He had this sofa government, it was described, a bit too informal, call me Tony, and all the rest of it. But these were very, very hard-working, serious people doing their utmost. No, in answer to your question, I can't understand this. I can't believe this would have happened under any other regime that I've ever lived through.
There's a sort of sense of contagion, isn't there? What?
Yeah.
I mean, 12:30 for the statement. PMQs will be interesting. I put you on the spot, actually. If you were Keir Starmer, what question would you ask at PMQs in 20 minutes' time?
I would ask him, Prime Minister, when you told the House of Commons, and then give a series of dates, that no rules were broken, were you deliberately misleading us? Because we have this weird thing in our constitution that in the end, the only thing people have to resign for is deliberately misleading Parliament. And I think this goes to the Privileges Committee, which is going to be quite tough for him, I think. And I think that is the single lethal line of attack.
Well, the Privilege Committee, I don't think starts for a fortnight, does it? I mean, so
it'll start shortly after June the 6th.
So there's more delay, more kicking of cans. So today will not signal the end of the saga, regardless of what transpires in the Commons later today. If you could just talk us through briefly the choreography of what happens next, Andrew.
So we have Prime Minister's questions, which will be the theatrical confrontation where Keir Starmer is under huge pressure to land a serious blow. He hasn't had long to read this report, but frankly, he and his team have had enough time. They'll have gone to conclusions, they'll have looked at the photographs, and he will be prepared for that. That'll be probably the big dramatic moment. But after that, there will be a statement by the Prime Minister of the House of Commons giving his explanation of the whole thing. He may try and push the questions off during PMQs until that moment.
Right.
But I know of Tory MPs who are determined to go in and ask some very hard questions at that moment. Then he goes and he does a press conference where, among other people, I hope to be asking a question myself. And no, I'm not going to tell you yet what it is because I haven't thought of it yet, just before you start.
Fair enough.
And then later on he goes to the 1922 committee, that's all the Tory MPs, meeting behind closed doors. And if you remember last time, there was a sense that there was an air of triumphalism, and that the previous apologies made in public weren't quite repeated there. And some Tory MPs are very upset about that. I think it's going to be large slices of humble pie all day with a side order of grovel sauce, and that will happen then, and then we'll see what happens later in the day. Then there's the Tonight with Andrew Marr on LBC at 6 o'clock. That's the concluding and most important part of the day, obviously.
Yes, you did. And is it too early to give us a flavour? I mean, obviously we know what you will be talking about. Do we know to whom you will be talking about it?
Well, I'm very much hoping that one of Mr. Johnson's critics, the MP Tobias Ellwood, will join us. He said he's going to do his very best. He's going to be in the chamber, so he'll have to duck out.
Of course.
And we will probably have a cabinet. Well, we will certainly have a cabinet minister, but. Of course, the question then is, can any cabinet minister add anything really to what Johnson himself has said in the House of Commons?